Hello, guys. It is Gail here with To the Point 101. And today we have Dejour. And Dejour recently turned 17. And she's, you actually started school already.
Technically, I start on Wednesday.
Okay. So she starts on Wednesday. And, this here video and this topic here is to kind of get younger people motivated and explained why it's so important to continue your education, and a lot of it has to do with how we parent our children. And she's going to explain the steps that she took and the support that she had behind her into getting into a good school with good grades. Um, so, Dejour, why don't you just tell them a little about yourself?
Um, well, my name's DeJour. As she mentioned, I skipped the grade. Did you? I don't know if she mentioned that. I think she mentioned that. I skipped the grade, so I'm still currently 17, but starting my freshman year of college. And right now, just for now, an intended economics major on a pre-law track.
Wow. So, what was it like? I mean, was there any um, fears that you were going through when you had to start school early, or it was just something that came natural? Was you afraid being
Um,
in a grade with older children? Did you get distracted? Like, how was it in grade school?
in elementary, most people at the time they didn't really notice until I said something. Now it was elementary, so I'm not anything against them. There were a few jokes, even though it was only about a 1 to 2 year difference, depending on the person, because some people started school late, some people started
Right.
school early, so there would sometimes could be like a 2 year difference between me and other people. But I wasn't really nervous. It never really got to me. They would make joke, I make comment back, about how there's not a big difference between us. But when it came to skipping a grade, I wasn't too nervous. They had me take a test. I
Hmm.
passed,
Let me
took
just
the
ask you,
test.
what grade? What grade was you in when you?
Oh, it was like elementary. Like I skipped from kindergarten to second.
Wow.
It was going to be kindergarten to third,
Right.
but my mom was worried that people would make fun of me or not want to befriend me because of my age.
Right. And did you find any of that to be true? Like, did you go through a little of people not wanting to associate with you because of your age?
Um, Not really, nothing that I could recall other than like the elementary school jokes. Once they
Right.
got, their little jokes out, it
Right.
was like everyone in there was the same age. They didn't really pay too much mind to it.
So, did the teachers treat you any different, or they just knew? I mean, they would know because they see your record that you are the younger one in the classroom.
Sometimes, see, the thing about that, you would think that they know from the beginning, but
Right.
even like thinking recently, like high school, senior
Hmm.
year, this lady, my homeroom teacher, and my AP, what was it, AP Lit, I think it was,
Hmm.
teacher, I loved her. She's known me since freshman year.
Uh-huh.
She just so happened to be my homeroom teacher at the end of the year and senior year.
Uh-huh.
And at the very end, she told me that she didn't realize that I was the youngest out of everyone
Hmm.
because when my last day of school was in May.
Hmm.
My birthday's in June. So at the time I was still 16. She was like, I didn't realize you were still 16. Meanwhile, like about half of my homeroom had already turned 18. I was
Right.
like, yeah,
Right.
I don't really mention it, but no, you would think that everybody would know, but most of the
Right.
teachers never really noticed until they went to go look at my stuff.
Right. And so, what during that time? Was it hard to maintain your grades? You know what I mean? Because being so young, so it kind of forced you to mature quicker.
Um, well, when it came to grades, I was kind of able to maintain my grades, probably because I skipped so early.
Right.
Because since I skipped from kindergarten to second, all that time leading up until high school and middle school and such, I knew everything that
Right.
everybody else knew. Because I don't think you're really missing much in like first grade, other
Right.
than like how to socialize and stuff. But even with that, I never really had any problem socializing. I'd go to sleepaway camp. Now at sleepaway camp, it was like, I don't know. I don't want to say a rude awakening, more like a reminder that I was younger than my friends,
Right.
because we'd go to the same camp. They'd be put in a separate cabin, and I would be put in the youngest cabin, even if there was only a year between us.
Right.
And we went to sleepaway camp for about 3-4 years.
Mhm.
And even till the last year we went, I still never got to be in the same
Right.
cabin with them, just because of our age.
Right. So, do you think that there's a difference in the education in because you went to a private school,
Private Catholic school.
a private Catholic school? So, the friends that I want to say was not in the same school. So, did you have friends outside of that Catholic school? Let me just say, put it that way.
I did, but they went to a performing arts school, so they can't really be held to the same standard. Like my friend, she recently, just I think it was the 25th, moved into her dorm for college.
Uh-huh.
They kind of had like majors in their high school, and she focused on ballet. So a lot of things, like I would say how I had to take Regents, because Regents is a mandatory test you take at the end of the year in
Right.
New York.
Mhm.
She didn't have to take that because it was a performing arts school. And then I had some friends who didn't even have like AP classes in their
Uh-huh.
school. I don't know. It's kind of like different.
So, you think there's a difference between the Catholic education and private education and the public school?
Definitely. Unless you go to New York has these things called specialized high schools,
Mhm.
and you have to take like, well, I guess at the time it was a difficult test, because I did also take that test along with taking the Catholic high school test, because they also have a test you have to take to be admitted.
Mhm.
At the time, I found that test to be kind of difficult. The specialized high schools are very selective.
Right.
So I'd say they're technically still public, but they're specialized. So I would say the specialized high schools and the private schools probably on par with each other. But like, I guess I think they're called like the district schools, like PS,
Right. Right. Mhm.
100.
Right.
They have a whole bunch. They're a bit, different in terms of like teaching standards.
Mhm. So, as far as your education, like where would you say you got a lot of your support?
Um, Most likely my mother. She was always, as you can probably tell by the elementary school decision to, manage which grade I went to.
Right.
Her main concern was always my well-being, both like emotionally, academically, mentally, just everything. So
Right.
I'd probably say my mother.
Okay. Okay. And so, what was it like for you to attend your? Did you guys have um, like the school dances with you were still younger, or did they mix the grades there?
Um, Big elementary school, we didn't really have dances. We had trips, but even with the trips, all the grades were separated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, middle school, middle school, we had parties where the
Right.
grades mixed, but even then, I usually stuck with my friend group within my grade. But because it was such like it was also a private school, and
Right.
because it was such a I want to say small school,
Uh-huh.
there was one class per grade. So it wasn't really any. I mean, I still made friends with people in
Right.
older grades and like the younger grades, but it's kind of like, one class per grade, not really much to work
Right.
with.
Right. What was your favorite subject?
Mm, in all schools, probably English. Doesn't matter
Really?
which English class it was.
Uh-huh.
I just liked English.
Ace English.
Mhm.
And what was your hardest subject?
Um,
Which one did you struggle with?
I want to say the beginning of freshman year before COVID hit and we went online.
Uh-huh.
I surprisingly was really struggling with Algebra 1. And it got to the point where, like, my teacher, who also happened to be my homeroom teacher at the time, reached out to my mom.
Uh-huh.
It was like, hey, we noticed that, when she's kind of struggling, she kind of like shuts down.
Right.
So, then we all had like a meeting about that,
Mhm.
got me into some like tutoring. And it was like,
And that helped.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to the young group now? What would you say? Why is it so important to get that education?
um, well, I feel like this is a really obvious answer, but
Uh-huh.
to be educated, I feel like with the way the world is going and as we progress into the future, you definitely want to be like, I don't want to say in the loop, but you
Right.
want to be able to speak on topics you think are important or topics that may affect you.
Right.
And also, if you like, okay, well, kind of with the way the college application process is now, it's
Uh-huh.
like people like to joke around and call it a lottery, which kind of is. Especially this year, it was so hectic. But if you focus on your grades, chances are when you get to college, you'll be able to at least, I don't want to say compete, but kind of compete for a spot in
Right.
the college you want. Because a lot of, like, I even had friends, we were kind of talking about it. The problem is, especially with COVID and online learning, and we
Right.
kind of just checked out. Like we'd be on the laptop, but we weren't actually,
Right.
learning. Um, People kind of didn't think. Like, well, it's not that they didn't think. They probably forgot that about 3 to 4 years later, those grades that you thought didn't matter freshman year, they're gonna matter.
Right. Right. So, I mean, how did you study? Like, what would you do when you, like, if you knew you had a test coming up? Like, how would you prepare yourself?
Um, Luckily, a lot of my teachers they gave packets and just review sheets, and they would tell us specifically what to review. Though I did have one teacher junior year, he was so firm on not giving us review sheets or packets because he said it was a privilege to
Right.
get a review sheet or a packet,
Mhm.
and nobody was really a fan of that. So
Right.
for him, we just kind of had to review all of our notes from what we started learning after our last test or quiz, all the way
Right.
up until
That point.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And so I want to say during that time, so did you, like most people, like if there's a test coming up or whatever, so I remember with my children, I would say, you have to go to bed early. You have to get a good breakfast. You know what I mean? Like, did you follow that type of protocol, or the smarty that you are, it just came to you like, I don't need to, well, everybody needs to study, but you do have to study that hard, or it just depend on the subject?
It really depended on the subject. Really, the only subject I ever really struggled with.
I'm telling you, I'm online.
The only subject I really struggled with, which I know is going to sound kind of crazy because I just said I'm an economics major, or
Uh-huh.
intended economics major. Don't know if I'm going to stick with that.
Right.
Was math. So it's kind of like, I mean, I didn't fail math. I never
Right.
failed math, thankfully.
Right.
But it took a little extra studying, like more so than I would for the other subjects.
And what does economic involve? Like, what is it that you're studying?
Well, it has a lot to do with math, but it mostly kind of focus on like how certain societal issues are dealt with, like basically the way it was kind of simplified for me is like who gets what, like how does the government and different like organizations decide where they allocate their resources.
So do you think that you would go into politics?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, so to make a difference in the world, because I mean, what are your views on the economic system right now? What do you think needs to change? Let's say um, tomorrow they would say, you know what, we want you to run for governor, and let's just pretend that you are at a debate, you're in a debate right now, and they ask you, what are the changes that you would make? What would be the changes?
um no, I don't think I've thought about that far yet.
Right.
So I would not know.
So, but if you had to just, based on what you know, the knowledge that you have in economics right now, like, how would you apply that in the
Um,
change and to change the things that's going on? I mean, would it be the government? Would, like, would it be in the laws? Would it be something dealing with children?
probably public policy for New York or specifically the city.
Right,
As I'm sure everyone knows, I'm not sure if they've like identified it as a crisis yet,
right,
but there's a considerable amount of homeless, and
right,
it's
right,
like on the news. I constantly hear them talking about how well, I'm sure they do have shelters,
right.
but it doesn't seem like it's really
Effective.
effective.
Right.
So probably starting with public policy around that.
Right. So do you think that um because I know that they're building different houses around different states. But do you think that that is effective? Because it just seems like um, the homeless population is growing.
Um, I'm not sure. They like. I was gonna say they could be more helpful. Like something a lot of people I've noticed is, they call it. I'm not what. I'm not sure what they call it. It's
Uh-huh.
something about the infrastructure. It's
Right.
not like I knew the word was infrastructure,
Uh-huh.
but there's a phrase that they put before it. Like you see those benches with like they're chopped up into like little sections with like the bars in between,
Right.
so
Uh-huh.
nobody could sleep on the bench.
Well,
A lot
that's what
of
the purpose is. I never do
mhm.
that. Like, and
Or
I'm learning something. I'm learning something.
in some places, like you would think. I think there was one train station, but I can't remember
Uh-huh.
which one it was. You would think it would have a bench, but to get rid of the problem of them sleeping there, no benches. Now everybody's just standing. So it's
Right.
like,
Right.
and then there's some places that just have like straight up spikes. So
Wow. Okay. But so I can say that I'm proud of you um, and your accomplishments, and like good luck for your future, because I just truly believe that our young children are our future, and we need to support them and we need to encourage them. And what I want to say is to a lot of the young ones out there that even though it seems like your parents are riding your back, um, like education is so important. It is so important if you want to see the changes made. Like the young children, they are our future, and we have too many of them you know being led astray by you know gang violence, or like some young girls believe that their future should involve, oh, I just want to have a baby because I'm in love. I just think that the time that you put into trying to secure this relationship you should take that time to work on yourself and better yourself so that you can fit into society a little better. Do you think? Because it just seemed like there's just a lot of young parents, and to me, that's another crisis that needs to be worked on. Even though some schools, they do talk about birth control or whatever, but like Dejour said, her support came from her mom. So if we are, especially our women, young ladies, and I don't want to put, I want to say, am I using the right words? A stigmatism on race, a stigma on race. It's for any woman, any young girl coming up. It doesn't matter if you're black, brown, if you're Mexican, if you're Indian. I think that we as parents owe it to ourselves and also owe it to our children to say that there is nothing more important that you can get outside of your education. Because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, this boy or this girl or this man or this woman, they can preach love to you or whatever. And then the next thing you know, if you're dependent on that person to take care of you because you have no education, basically you're almost like you're sentencing yourself to a life of hardship. You know what I mean? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. It's kind of something that I've noticed since like 2019 probably because of TikTok. Me and my friend, we noticed like a lot of, well, not too many. I haven't seen too many recently, but back in like 2019 and somehow 2020, even though it was supposed to be quarantine, we saw a lot of posts about teen parents, and we were just like, oh wow.
Yeah, they even made a television show about teen parents.
I still don't know how that was a thing, but I don't know.
Right.
Reality TV.
Exactly. But guys, like I said, Dejour is here, and to motivate that person, that young person that's in school and struggling to finish and move on. So when you look in the camera at that person, what would you say to them?
Honestly, just to keep your future in mind and to remember that it's not endless. Like a lot of people feel like, oh, work's just never gonna end. And of course, I mean, you're gonna have to work like your entire life, but it's not the end of the world. You do have people around you to help you get through whatever it is that you're going through, and just to keep persevering.
And there you have it from Dejour, that kept persevering, and now she is a freshman there in New York. Bless you. And it's just a beautiful thing. We have to honor our children that is fighting, because she's taking up economics, and like she said, she may switch up. We don't know, but right now her future is very important to her, important enough that she is willing to make that change to better the generation that's coming up under her. So that is the reason why it is important to get that education. When you have that support team there, and parents, that's why it's so important to support our loved ones, support our young ones, because like the song said, our children are our future. And there's a lot with Medicare and all these other things that's going on in the world that's in limbo. like teach your child to keep moving forward regardless of the struggle. They are to move forward and better themselves, because the way the world is changing, if we don't um, encourage our children to get that education, their future is in limbo. So thank you so much. And Deja, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And, hopefully someone that's young, will feel like, what, that's something I can do too. You know what I mean? So each time, whenever you get that chance to do some public speaking, then you should do it, because we need to hear more from our young generation, especially our young females. Okay, so thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you, and hopefully this will help your child and yourself. Okay, so this is Gail with To The Point. Let's talk about it, and that is Deja's testimony on why it is so important